And we're live.
Welcome to our special meeting of Municipal Council today for Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I will move to our land acknowledgement. The Town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I would like to thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationships that the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in this responsibility. This is our first meeting for 2022. Happy New Year to everyone, all members of council, staff, and those that are watching us today. We're moving along with 2022. These are hard words to say, given what we continue to be in the midst of this pandemic. However, we can be optimistic that 2022 will be the year we get through this and begin our recovery efforts. The perfect segue to our character community attribute for January, which is optimism. We will remain a positive attitude, look on the brighter side of situations, and seek opportunity in the face of adversity. Let's all try and do that in the coming days and weeks. With that, I'm at item D, and that is our COVID update. And Mr. Velchik, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and Happy New Year to everybody. Great to see everyone. I won't go through the memo per se. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You see these regularly, and I think you can understand the information that's in there today, but I will add a few things that we can sort of supplement that with. First of all, had the opportunity to attend in our CAO's place last week, the CAO COVID update meeting, which is represented by all the CAOs or their designates across the region of York, so the 9 municipalities. Couple of really interesting things that came out of that meeting. Basically, at that point, all the regional municipalities, except for one, had gone back to shutting public access to their municipal facilities for sort of walk-in access, given the high rate of the transmission of the COVID and COVID variants. The one thing that was quite prominent was discussion about how in the first sort of 18 or so months of the pandemic, we'd all done a pretty good job seeing very minimal sort of transmission or COVID positive cases amongst our staff teams. But all the municipalities were expressing concern last Thursday about what they were seeing happening at their employee ranks. And in EG, by way of example, prior to the holidays, we had very, very few incidents of positive COVID cases amongst our employee population. And within a handful of weeks coming back after the new year, about 10% of our employee population was reporting positive for COVID. So something we wanted to make sure we took very seriously, and I think our group has acted on that very quickly. We believe that has plateaued. Little hard to tell because it comes in ebbs and flows, but we believe that based on the actions that we've taken and we continue to prioritize health and safety protocols and minimal contact and that sort of thing, that we think that that's plateaued. I also wanted to report that, let me just see, I don't want to forget anything important here. There's been discussion, and I think at the last meeting, one of the questions that we had from one of the council members was around where we are with testing kits and, the availability of testing kits. Really pleased to report that our fire chief, Chief McKenzie, who's our community emergency management coordinator, has been able to arrange for 200 testing kits to be available in EG. Those just arrived a couple of days ago, so we're pleased that we're going to have some access to kits, and we hope that that access will increase over time. But as you know, this is funneled through the federal and provincial governments, and so we do our best to kind of get ourselves in line and get access to those kits. But I'm pleased to report that we do have some kits now available that are available for our use. And the other question that came up at the last meeting was about where we are in terms of maybe being able to get access to additional vaccinations and booster shots and that sort of thing. And as of yesterday, there was actually a really important announcement by York Region Public Health. And again, our fire chief communicated that to us late yesterday. About 10,000 appointments have been opened up for this coming weekend in several clinics across the region, and they will prioritize frontline services. So that will include our emergency services staff, our water and wastewater staff, our bylaws staff. So some of those key areas that as I put it on Thursday with the CAOs, when you're a relatively small, lean organization, when you're always a fine line between being in good shape and being in difficult shape. So I said we're operationally in pretty good shape right now, but we're always only a step or two away from that changing if we had people start to come down with this and be off work. So operationally, I can report that we are stable right now, and I would say things are generally all under control. We believe that the rapid transmission that sort of hit us over the handful of weeks between Christmas and the New Year seems to have plateaued, but we continue to monitor that very carefully. And as I say, there's clinics opening up for booster shots this weekend, including one in the Newmarket Community Center and several spots across the region that will be communicating that will prioritize frontline service providers, including a number of our staff. So that's really what I have to report. Our facility right now, Madam Mayor, remains closed for public walk-in access, but is available for critical services if needed on an appointment basis. And I'm also pleased to report that the data we've kept since October, when we reopened, shows that we've had probably about, on average, 1 to 2 people per hour that have come into our Civic Center facility. Probably 75 to 80% of those to drop off payments or make inquiries about water and tax accounts. So very easy for us to use the Dropbox and phone to deal with any of those services. In fact, all of the services that are being accessed here, with the exception of marriage licenses, we're able to transition very quickly to alternative forms of service delivery. So, very, we've been very proactive in ensuring that the services that our residents are relying on and businesses are relying on continue to be available in an alternative manner during the time that we are shut for public walk-in access. So that's a few extra details just to add to the memo that you have before you, and myself or any of the COVID team are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Velchik. Mr. Webster, did you have anything to add to that as well before I ask if there's any questions?
Madam Mayor, I have nothing to add at this time.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Velchik was very complete. Thank you very much. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please, then Councillor Crothers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to staff. I've had some contact from residents who are, they're understandably concerned about the distribution of testing kits from the province. Is there anything that we can do as a lean, mean organization that can assist the province in the distribution of these testing kits? I know some provinces use libraries. Just wondering if there's been any conversations with the province or public health around distribution of kits so that it might be a little more equitable to make sure that everyone gets their hands on one.
Madam Mayor, I don't know whether our fire chief has anything to add, because he's sort of been the key point person with the other CEMCs at sort of identifying the logistics and distribution channels. Certainly, we remain open, both at our facilities and just in terms of support for anything we can do to help that distribution take place. I can say that where there's been a bottleneck is in actual access to the kits, more so than sort of inadequate access to distribution channels or willing hosts, if you will. As you know, we've also been a willing host for pop-up vaccination clinics and so on. So it's the actual access to the kits that's been the bottleneck, and our fire chief was successful in getting us a preliminary inventory of 200 kits, which we got in the last couple of days. That's really our priority, is to continue to work with the region and through them to the province and feds to get access to the kits. And then we would absolutely be willing to assist in not only communicating the availability, but the distribution.
Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm wondering if, two questions. First of all, I'm assuming that those 200 test kits are for our employees to help keep operations running. Good. I just want to make that clear in case anyone was listening to this. I'm wondering if it's possible for us to get breakdowns of the ICU numbers at Southlake and any of their staffing issues there. It's very scary when you're listening to the news and hearing how emergency rooms are over capacity and that sort of thing. I was wondering if we had a local perspective on that.
What we can do, Madam Mayor, is we do have, through our CEMC group, they meet weekly, and we do get updates each week from York Region in terms of sort of their public health updates. Perhaps what we can do is look through the information that they're sharing, and if there's some information relevant to the question the Councillor Carruthers has asked, we'd be happy to pass that along.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With respect to the testing kits, as far as public availability, it's my understanding, and perhaps staff can do a little bit more digging for us. It's my understanding that the province has also changed the way that they are, I guess, the qualification criteria. I had read somewhere, probably on Twitter, which is not necessarily the most news trustworthy location, but that they had that they were not doing any more pop-ups for members of the public, and that they were not to be used for social circumstances, and that they were limiting the who had access to those kits. So while I'm happy to hear that our staff as essential workers and frontline employees have access to them, and that we can continue to use them to maintain our essential operations, the members of the public, I think, might be out of luck. And so I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that from staff. I did want to circle back to the Civic Center and having it open to the public. I feel like we're giving some mixed messages to the public. If it's safe for folks to come into the public library to browse the stacks and to work on as a warming center, or even as access to computers, why we wouldn't also maintain access to the Civic Center customer care desk. If we're looking at 1 to 2 people per hour, then it's not a question of crowds of people. We know how to protect our staff with barriers and PPE, and obviously we want to push as many members of the public to use our virtual services. But if there is something that simply cannot be done over the phone or through email, then I think it's important that we maintain that point of contact, especially if it's such a low volume of people. You can maintain distance and so on in order to make sure that we're continuing to provide those services. It's just my perspective. Thank you.
Mr. Webster or Mr. Velchik, those that have asked to come in or needed to work with our staff on the inside, have there been any situations where we've been unsuccessful in meeting their needs?
Not that I'm aware of, Madam Mayor.
Okay, perhaps that's something that we could look into. I realize that most municipalities, their town offices or city halls are closed. And I feel that if we have staff in, then as long as they're serving the public in some form or another, I know that people would like to come in and actually see them, but I also know that the drop box is used quite a bit now as well. So I have mixed feelings about it, but if we do actually have situations where it is critical, I'm not talking about a garbage pail or a recycle bin or whatever, but something of a much greater nature. I'd like to know that. I think if we could find that out, and if there's other ways of dealing with them. I know we want to keep our staff safe and as far away from issues as we possibly can, but we also want to serve our public as well. So if we could just check on that, not urgent, but I think it's important that the consistency of other municipalities continues the same as that we can lever that message at least. Thank you. Councillor Roy DiClemente, go ahead.
Just further to that, whether it's a transactional thing or if it's a policy thing, I can anecdotally share that whenever the Civic Center is closed, my phone gets a lot busier. People who say that the calls aren't being picked up, and obviously it's anecdotal. I can tell you that even just this morning, my phone I've had a phone call from a resident who only phones when they can't come into the Civic Center. So, it's those sorts of things. It's not that I don't mind doing the work, but it just, there's a perception in from the members of the public that they cannot get the services that they're looking for from the municipality if they cannot walk into the Civic Center in person. And I know that those numbers are few, but they are meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Velchik, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, what would be helpful for us as staff, and I'm not sure, because we do track all of the inquiries that come into our desk, but if there's an inquiry that you're getting directly as an elected official, we may or may not know about it. We may know about it because perhaps they've also called us. But if you could at least pass some of those along to us, so at least for our information and for our tracking, we might be able to include that in our data, just so that we have an idea of if there are concerns being raised that aren't coming to staff's attention. It'd be kind of difficult for us to address them if we don't know about them. So just if we could work together on that, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. It usually ends up with staff. If they haven't already engaged with staff, it usually goes there first, then gets addressed by a member of council. But it's really just a question of how those inquiries are coming in and the feedback that I get when the Civic Center is closed.
Thank you. And Mr. Velchik, I will also throw that out to all members of council should they have calls that come to them because they can't find service with our staff with the building closed, if they could also share that with you as well. Sometimes it's not a phone call, sometimes it's standing in Vince's with your grocery cart. But at least if we can understand, maybe there's some changes that we can make to serve our public better. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Foster, all those in favor, and that's carried.
Madam Mayor, I did have one other item, if it's appropriate. It's related to COVID. We talked earlier about how we had about 10% of our staff who had reported in sick. Do we have a sense of the domino effect of close contacts and people who have been isolating? They may not be ill or may not have tested positive, but they have been identified as a close contact and are having to isolate, because I think that that also has an operational impact for us. And do we have a sense of that, or is it simply everyone's reporting in sick and it's we don't know whether they've tested positive or they're simply in isolation?
Mr. Velchik or Mr. Webster, who might be able to answer that?
I would let Mr. Velchich, if he has an opportunity, from my perspective, when we had somewhat of a spike and we went from very, very little cases over the last 2 years to last week at this point, 14 employees, which was about 10% of our employee workforce. And we were fearful that we would be coming to council this week saying that the numbers were double that or possibly, and fortunately our case count is trending down now. So our employees are doing the right things. Our work practices, particularly for our frontline folks, is very much ensuring masking and social distancing. So we're watching the trends. We're also have a heightened awareness of emergency services, water and wastewater, those essential service areas to make sure. And that's where Chief McKenzie, by leveraging the test kits, and I believe the test kits, we say 200, but I believe there's 5 in each. So that gives you 1,000 kits. And that's really helps safeguard those key areas. And we're distributing it through the chief to General Manager Molinari's area as we speak. And we met with some of the frontline folks in person today, and they welcomed the notion that we were enabling the testing kits. So we continue to take part in the regional calls as well. So some of those questions that have been asked about South Lake and other regional hospitals, case counts and ICU situations, and general trends in municipalities will follow as well. I don't know if Mr. Velchich did mention it, but we did vet with facility closures. And at this point in time, I believe there's only 2 municipalities. Aurora did not participate in last week's call, but I believe Newmark and Aurora have very limited customer service access. And the 7 other municipalities and York Region have fully gone to closure until the trend on these latest case counts it becomes a more positive news story.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Webster? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. We will move along in our agenda at this point. We do not have any deputations today. We will move to item F, and that's our workshop. And I will turn it over to Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we've had a busy couple of weeks, and the good news was that staff worked hard prior to the holiday closure, and we had these 2 presentations ready to go, and we just fine-tuned them. So we're looking forward to 2 good discussion topics today. The first being an update on our economic development strategy and a full discussion on that. And second will be our IT strategy and another good update on that as we emphasize business transformation and modernization moving forward. Just a couple of opening comments and perspectives from myself with regards to economic development. And, one of the things I'd really like to start off with, and I'm not sure if we have some of the folks as part of this, is our advisory committee. And we're really quite fortunate that we have a wealth of volunteers in the community that have such terrific business experience. And not just in the EDAC, our Economic Development Advisory Committee, but in our other advisory committees as well. It's something that we're very fortunate to have and continue to look forward to working with these committees moving forward. With regards to EDAC, two persons of note that I would like to acknowledge are George Shriver and Doug Leach. And I was talking to Mark Velchich just last week, and it was about 2016. That we actually retained those 2 individuals to come in to our organization and do an unbiased audit of our economic development function. And they made some recommendations at the time. that were very concrete and that we acted on. And what they noted at the time is that we had a presence in economic development. We always had an economic development function. It was usually a coordinator. It was placed in our planning area, and so it reported through planning. That's pretty typical. And they in their report to us indicated that if we really wanted to get serious about business attraction, business retention, that we needed to invest and resource it in a different way. And so they had two key recommendations that came out of their findings were that we should take the economic development function and have it report corporately. And it would give it more impetus, more exposure to the CAO's office and to council. And the second one was to resource it through not just a coordinator position, but to go out and get an experienced, qualified director role. And I can share with council that we take pride in that we listened to these recommendations and acted on them. And we moved the area to report now it reports through our deputy CAO and corporate services overseer Mark Velchich. And also we attracted a very experienced person, Margot Bajie. And today she's going to make a presentation about where we are. I would also like to note that EDAC took a look at some of our experiences with respect to business expansion and with some real live cases. Vince's was one, Align Healthcare, and they went out and met with these folks. And there were some hard lessons learned for us as an economic development entity and as a town. Some of these things didn't go as well as they could have, but again, listening to some of the recommendations, Margot happened to arrive just as some of these findings were upon us, and we've really done a job, and you're going to hear from her today of the things that have happened under her relatively short tenure with us. And people can make a big difference. She's made a great difference in the role as part of our senior leadership team. And I'm just going to pass it over to either Mark or her. I don't know if it's going right to Margot to talk about where we are and how we plan to even get better with regards to economic development. So I think to follow protocol, I'll pass it over to Deputy Velchich, who will introduce Margot, and then we look forward to her workshop discussion.
Thanks, Tom. And really delighted to have this workshop topic with you today, Madam Mayor and Council. It's not a new subject because I think you got a bit of a sneak peek into this back in the fall. And this is kind of a little bit deeper dive into the work that we've been doing and that Margot's been in particular leading. And I think you'll enjoy the information that's going to be shared with you. And we'd like to really hopefully encourage you to give us your thoughts, feedback, and input as we move forward and really try and sort of achieve that goal of EG building that balanced community that's much more than just residential development, but that really important component of job creation that we need for many, many reasons in East Gwillimbury. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Margot will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you may also hear a little bit from Brittany, who works with Margot today as well. And I want to commend Margot for not only her leadership, but for the support that she's provided and how she's engaged Brittany, who's her right hand in the ECDEV, small but mighty ECDEV department. And we really like to get an opportunity for you to hear from the key members of our team that are all working together to do some pretty awesome things. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Margot.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor, it's my pleasure to be here this morning to speak to you not only about the economic development strategy, but also just a little bit more about the practice of economic development and how it functions within EG. So if we could go to slide 2, please. I'm not able to see if the slides are up, sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just confirming, I do see that the slides are functional on our live stream. Margot, I have the slide on workshop.
Okay,
overview.
perfect. Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thank you, CAO Webster, for providing a little bit of the context in terms of how we got to today, building the right team, and certainly the value that our Economic Development Advisory Committee brings. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through a little bit of a summary of some of the key projects, or just a sampling of some of those major projects that are underway to give you context for what economic development looks like. And we'll touch on some of the key economic development principles that go into how we do the work that we do. And then we'll dive into the strategy in a little bit more detail. I'll talk a little bit about how we put the strategy together in terms of the research and analysis, and then how we arrived at some of our strategic priorities. And then I'll talk in more specifics about the actions and tactics that we plan to undertake to support those priorities. And then I'd like to get into a little bit of discussion in terms of our vision for growth and sort of understanding what's possible and where we might go from here. Next slide, please. So here we have some of the this is just one example of some of the current development projects underway. They provide some insight into the range of growth activity that EG is experiencing and are a great reminder, not only of the contribution that these businesses are making to job growth, but to the contribution that they are making to our economy through the fees and charges and annual tax contribution. So slide 4 shows Royal Woodshop, which opened their doors in their new location late last year, and they're looking forward to a grand opening celebration when COVID protocols permit. But that brought approximately 40 jobs to the area. Next slide, please. Sharon Corners, we know, is well underway, and that's going to be bringing a range of jobs in healthcare professionals, programming staff, and support staff, such as the folks that will work in the restaurant on site and cleaning staff, those kinds of things. And as you can see, it also makes a significant tax contribution on an annual basis, or will be making that on an annual basis. Next slide. The Welland Group is another example. They're undertaking a development along Green Lane, a mixed-use development that includes some more dense sort of intensification of our residential apartments or buildings through apartments, but also some commercial and office developments as well. So another, they're undertaking phase 1 at this point, but when all phases are completed, they're looking at approximately 170 jobs at full project build out. On the next slide, we're looking at the Woodbine 1 development currently being undertaken by the Rice Group, which we've heard about before the break, and we know that it's bringing somewhere in the area of 1,000 jobs at full build out. It's a mix of skilled and unskilled occupations that will include things like information technology, administration, sales, and marketing. Not only is this bringing significant contribution in terms of the fees and charges that they will be paying, but it gives a good context in terms of the money that's being injected into the economy through the overall capital project expenditure. We're looking at a project that's in and around $1 billion through materials, construction, services, and all of that is being injected into the regional economy. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick summary of some of the other projects that are ongoing, and it certainly is indicative of what we've been seeing throughout COVID. And it's remarkable that even with all the challenges of the pandemic, that we continue to see interest in from expanding companies in locating and expanding in East Gwillimbury. So we've got some projects in manufacturing and distribution, construction, and we know that Technicore is continuing to expand, for example, and then a couple of interesting projects that are just currently in the discussion phase around organics recycling, film studio location, medical offices, plastics manufacturing, and even a hotel and convention center. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about especially for any members of the public who may be joining the workshop today, I wanted to take a moment to highlight some of the foundational principles of economic development that guide our activities on a daily basis. Next slide, please. The first key principle that we think about in the economic development practice is the principle of sustainability. We certainly look at sustainability from an economic context, obviously, but also through an environmental and a social lens, ensuring that we have the right mix of jobs, investment, and residential growth to sustain the amenities, programs, and services that our residents and businesses require is paramount. Communities, just like households, need to plan for the future and ensure that they'll be able to live within their means. There are times when it makes sense strategically to incur debt, for example, but that would quickly become unsustainable if you don't think about how you're going to ensure that you have a means to repay that debt. Environmental sustainability is embedded in everything we do. On a large scale, we strive to achieve balance through the commitment that even as we grow and develop, more than 70% of EG's land mass will remain green and protected. On a smaller scale, it's about the technologies we adopt, the types of businesses we attract, and the policies we enact, such as our Thinking Green building standards. As we grow, so too must our efforts to ensure environmental sustainability. Social sustainability is more complex, but it also has to be a priority in everything that we do. Through our efforts to build complete communities, sustain neighborhoods, facilitate accessibility and inclusion, and to preserve heritage while embracing the new. Social sustainability requires us to work with our residents and businesses as we navigate this period of incredible change to ensure that both now and in the future, all residents are able to fully participate in community life. Next slide, please. Sustainable growth requires a balance so that the cost of high quality services and amenities does not fall entirely on the shoulders of residents. Without business contribution to help offset the cost of amenities like trails and parks and facilities like the Health and Active Living Plaza, those things become far less achievable if we have to rely solely on a residential tax base. Our investment attraction efforts seek to ensure that we're able to maintain a healthy balance, and we've seen significant improvement as the current rate or the current mix between residential and commercial taxes is approximately 88% residential to 12% commercial, and we're moving towards sort of that ideal target of 80 to 80-20 residential commercial. We've already seen significant improvement even in the last 5 years in moving toward that target. Next slide, please. And just to follow up a little bit on my earlier reference to complete communities, I think it's important to remember that if we're seeking communities that are walkable and connected, where everything is within 15 minutes reach, that it'll require us to reframe our ideas about residential centers that are, had traditionally been removed from commerce and business activity. If if you want a grocery store that you can walk to, for example, we have to recognize that it still needs trucks to deliver the products. A job you can walk to requires that employees have appropriate housing, and that may not always mean single family detached housing. So, as a result, we have some interesting and exciting conversations ahead of us in terms of how we achieve our complete community ideals. Next slide, please. As an economic developer, this concept is always foremost in my mind. It's why we advocate for the business interest. It's why we work to enhance business friendliness, why we strive to reduce red tape and simplify municipal processes, because it's those who take the risks, who make the investments that create employment opportunities for our residents. And they're really the only businesses who can help us achieve our job creation goals. Next slide, please. It's important to note that the contribution that businesses make to our economy goes beyond taxes, fees, and development charges. The wages that businesses pay help to sustain other businesses. They purchase supplies and services, and that in turn creates additional jobs and economic inputs within our economy. They're also often strong corporate citizens who contribute through volunteerism, donations, and sponsorship. Sometimes new development can look daunting. There's dirt, there's noise, there are changes to a once familiar landscape, and that's not always easy. But it's important to remember and for us to communicate well what that growth and development brings beyond the dirt, the noise, and disruption. Next slide, please. This next slide highlights just how important it is to remove barriers and to be business friendly, and to be as business friendly as possible. If we recognize the value that new investment brings, We also have to recognize that, we're competing for that investment on a global scale. In the absence of having any existing industry clusters or service shovel-ready lands or, US style incentives that our neighbors to the south are able to offer, East Gwillimbury really needs to be able to compete on its service delivery. And that's pretty much what Business Advantage is all about. Next slide, please. I'll speak a little bit more about the Business Advantage program and some of the exciting progress that we've made later in the workshop. But for now, I just want to acknowledge that Business Advantage, or being a proactive, welcoming, business-friendly community, requires all of us. Next slide, please. The final principle that I wanted to touch on relates to how we resource our economic development efforts, and CAO Webster made reference to this in his earlier remarks. We operate using the Shamrock model, which means that our core staff is able to remain very lean and focused, and we're able to engage outside help for specific targeted assistance. I have to say, without some of the support of the highly skilled consultants that we've worked with over the past year on the broadband expansion file, the business retention and expansion survey, the new website, and the target industry analysis, we simply would not have had either the bandwidth or the expertise to achieve what we did. Next slide, please. I'd now like to dive a little deeper into the updated economic development strategy. Council had an opportunity to get a quick overview last fall, but today we have a little more time to speak about the strategic priorities that have been identified and some of the specific actions and tactics that we're undertaking in pursuit of our goals. Next slide. So why do we need a strategy? An economic development strategy, like our municipal strategy, offers a roadmap toward a desired future state. It articulates what we want and how we're going to get there. It also allows us to evaluate our progress and the impact that we're having to ensure that our efforts are consistent and consistently in line with our larger municipal goals. Equally importantly, it allows us to allocate our resources effectively. We can't do everything, and having a clear strategy allows us to say no, or at least not yet, to the things that don't directly support our strategic priorities. Next slide. This next slide details some of the inputs or individual pieces of research that went into building the strategy. We considered the existing and former strategies. We looked at existing trends, both regionally, provincially, and globally, especially as they relate to projections for the post-pandemic economic recovery. The updated community profile provided important information about our changing demographics and growth projections. The SWOT analysis looked at, as the name suggests, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that could be addressed through strategic tactics and actions. And the target industry analysis gave us really good data about our industry and workforce strengths, and they highlighted where EG has its strongest opportunities for growth. And finally, we tested all of our assumptions with extensive stakeholder engagement and consultation. And the next slide speaks to our stakeholder engagement efforts. As part of our stakeholder engagement, we reached out to businesses through a number of surveys. We surveyed at the onset of the pandemic. We delivered a business walk, and then we had the more extensive triage business retention and expansion survey conducted last spring. We also saw input from stakeholders and members of the Economic Development Advisory Committee through key informant interviews, and we have continued to seek council engagement through interviews, update presentations, and obviously today's workshop. Next slide, please. The final product, produced both in long form and as a summary document, both available on the website now, and they detail the 5 strategic priorities for the coming 5-year period, outlining at a high level the actions, tactics, and strategies that we'll deploy to be able to undertake that we'll undertake to achieve those goals. Next slide, please. I'd now like to take the opportunity to explore the strategy in a little bit more detail. In the interest of time, I plan to focus on just one tactic or one area of activity within each strategic priority to identify both what we aim to achieve and then give an example of the how we will go about achieving it. And please, if I didn't say so earlier, if at any point any members of council have any questions or would like further clarity about some of the other strategic priorities or about the strategy as a whole, please feel free to jump in. I know you might get tired of hearing my voice after about 30 minutes of it. Next slide, please. So before I get into the specific priorities and actions, however, I do want to take a moment to review our target sectors. These are the sectors or the industries that represent the areas where EG already has a critical mass of businesses, where there is a match with local workforce skills and education, and where EG has, as a result, the strongest opportunities for growth. This is what we're good at. This is where we already have some existing momentum. The targeted sector analysis that we went through at the outset of the process told us what we have, what we're good at, and where the markets are most favorable. And as a result, EG's strongest momentum or opportunities for investment attraction and growth and job growth lie in manufacturing, in food processing and supply chain related to food processing, which obviously links back to our agricultural roots and still active agricultural community, construction products and services, industry supply and distribution, which, as we're seeing in some of the current development projects, advanced logistics is a key component of that, and healthcare. And this has certainly, as I said, been reflected in the new development projects that have come forward and in all of the expansion inquiries that we tend to see each week. Next slide, please. Education, tourism, and film location development are considered to be secondary targets. We recognize that it's important to grow these sectors, but equally recognize that there's more work to be done to build the foundation to the point where we have, as in the case of education, for example, or post-secondary education, for example, we want to make sure that we have the housing, the transit infrastructure, the industry alignment, and the lifestyle amenities to be able to compete for post-secondary programs. We also want to keep these goals in sight, but recognize that they're typically a longer term goal. Next slide, please. Recognizing what we're good at and where we have the strongest opportunities and considering all the inputs, feedback, and analysis, we narrowed our strategic focus to 5 key priorities for this updated strategy. And they are investment readiness and infrastructure, investment attraction, business retention and expansion, entrepreneurship and economic gardening, and enhanced communication. Next slide, please. Investment readiness speaks not only to our ability to respond to the investment inquiries by having good data and an effective website, but it also speaks to having a business-friendly process across all departments, essentially our internal commitment to business advantage that I referred to earlier. The strategy identifies a number of steps that we will take to enhance our investment readiness. The launch of the new Advantage EG website was a key milestone in this process, but there's still much more to be done. One area that we've not traditionally looked at, but which is rapidly becoming a critical factor in investment location decisions, is workforce development. And what I mean by that is that, investors or expanding companies are not only considering where there's available land or where there's, land is most affordable, what the tax structure is, but they also need to make sure that they have the available talent and workers to be able to meet their needs. And that as the demand for talent increases, that becomes a more critical decision factor. In this context, when we talk about workforce development, we're not simply talking about skill development and workplace education that takes place already in our existing businesses, although that is a critical component of supporting innovation and growth. What we're talking about is really the whole talent attraction pipeline and the retention ecosystem. Next slide, please. The war for talent is real, and we've seen the impact at a local level already that the pandemic closures and financial supports like the CERB have had on the service sector. As we welcome these exciting new projects that are bringing, in some cases, hundreds or thousands of jobs, we need to start planning now for where that talent or where those workers are going to come from. The current unemployment rate in the York region is somewhere between 4% and 5%. Of that available workforce, not all of them are going to have the skills to match these new jobs that are coming in. EG has been traditionally a commuter town with a significant portion of our workforce traveling outside of the municipality for employment. And by bringing these new opportunities in, we hope that EG residents will be able to take advantage of the opportunity to work where they live when these new jobs become available. But we also need to prepare for the fact that EG residents alone, as the population exists now, will not be able to fill all of the available roles. It's also important to plan and prepare for the inevitable shift that will happen in the service sector, primarily when other entry-level jobs, when new opportunities come in that offer higher wages or benefits. Next slide, please. Some of the things we can do to prepare ourselves to attract the talent that our growing businesses will need are to build effective partnerships with the York Region Workforce Planning Board, post-secondary institutions, and employers, most of all. And through those partnerships, we want to make sure that we proactively identify what are the skills and what are the supports that are going to be needed to build those skills to ensure that we have a constant source of talent to be able to feed these growing companies. And then, even thinking about, housing, transit, lifestyle needs, and what are those, what does that look like for this future workforce, and taking all of that into consideration in our planning and development, because that will be a critical factor of our ability to attract and retain the skills and the people that we need. And given our job growth targets, and the projected job growth that will result from some of the projects already in progress, I believe that it's going to be important to look at doing a comprehensive workforce talent attraction and retention strategy, and that's something that will be on our to-do list in the coming 12 to 18 months. Next slide, please. Investment attraction is the second priority I'm going to talk about, and this essentially encapsulates all the efforts to market EG and to attract new investment or new business expansion. Council has approved a capital project for lead generation this year, which I'm very appreciative of, and that will allow us to leverage the findings of the target industry analysis and the EG and to sort of test the EG value proposition that's been refined, through the Advantage EG website design process. We want to be able to connect with expanding companies that may be a good fit for EG. And it'll allow us to be proactive in going after high value jobs with companies that may be looking for Canadian market or Ontario market access. It would also enable us to target specific firms that can perhaps fill a supply chain gap or complement an existing industry. To date, our investment attraction has really been reactive, and having business-friendly processes is a key factor of supporting that. But now this will allow us to be more proactive in sort of identifying where their companies or expanding firms that will be a good fit specifically for where we want to go in the future. And also provide us with some really good feedback from the market about what we need to be doing to enhance our value proposition and what else we need to be doing in terms of becoming more business friendly and more investment ready. Next slide, please. This next slide speaks to why we pursue investment attraction, especially why we pursue foreign direct investment, or FDI. When a new market firm expands and relocates to EG, for example, we certainly see the benefit through fees and charges and increased tax revenue, but we can't escape the fact that we're part of a regional economy. Attracting jobs or investment from a neighboring municipality doesn't really contribute to sort of the overall economic growth. The same dollars are still circulating within the economy, and the benefit to one municipality in many cases can result in a negative impact on a neighboring municipality. So bringing investment in from outside of the region or outside of the country, as in the case of FDI, introduces new dollars, and it also brings in access to new markets, and often comes along with it comes new technology, which helps to strengthen and diversify the local economy. And these are essentially the primary reasons why a municipality or a jurisdiction would pursue FDI. So as we move forward in this tactic, it's an opportunity to leverage the efforts of partners like Toronto Global to focus the message more beyond some of the larger players like Toronto or Mississauga, and start building relationships with firms who can benefit specifically from what East Gwillimbury has to offer. I'm now going to turn things over to Brittany Stevenson-Byers to talk about the next two strategic priorities. Brittany, as you know, is the other half of our economic development department, and she started with the town in a customer service role, which I think is really important because it provided her with an excellent foundation for understanding the various roles and functions within the organization. But I also want to note that since becoming a permanent member of the ECDev team, Brittany's been pursuing professional certification through the Economic Developers Association of Canada, and has just completed her year 2 studies through the University of Waterloo. So upon submission and approval of a research paper, candidates with 3 years of experience are then eligible to sit the certification exam, which comprises about 5 hours of multiple choice and essay questions and then an oral exam component. It's a lot of work, but very worthwhile. And I believe it's an important part of building our capacity as a municipality. And I'm thrilled that Brittany has embraced this. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Brittany.
Thank you, Margot. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm getting an echo. I think that's better. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Margot. The next strategic priority is business retention and expansion. The business retention and expansion aims to improve competitiveness of the firms by sharing information and resources and by working to increase the supply and quality of labor. Approximately 80% of all new job growth will stem from existing businesses, which is why business engagement, connecting businesses to programs and funding, and forging that connection between local and businesses are ways for our businesses to grow and stay within our community. For example, the business survey that was completed in June of 2021 improved our business directory, tracked business satisfaction, and identified opportunities to support businesses directly. The local product box is another example of recognizing the need to support businesses that have been affected by the pandemic and increasing awareness of the benefits of shopping local. In respect of time, I'm going to highlight downtown revitalization and placemaking as one of the objectives of business retention and expansion. Next slide, please. Oh, hold on. Sorry, can you go back? I feel like, can you go back? Sorry, I feel like there was a slide missing. That's okay. Can you just continue to the next slide? And I'll just stay there. So downtown revitalization. So the primary goal of revitalization is to drive economic activity through enhanced attractiveness, access, and animation of vibrant public spaces. And although downtown revitalization is captured as an engineering project, and you'll see physical changes and upgrades to the infrastructure, if the efforts don't create an engaging environment with increased visitation and local spending, then the goals of this project will not be met. 3 key points of the project to consider are business continuity, such as how businesses continue to operate successfully through any disruptions. Business growth and new business attraction, how we can make AG a competitive and attractive location for new businesses that meet the needs of our demographics, and commercial gap and opportunities, such as identifying and filling commercial and retail gaps in the community cores within EG, and what services and amenities is the community looking for that aren't already established, and what will the market support. Thank you. The EG Loves Local app is a project that we will undertake later this fiscal year, and we will provide council with further details when we are ready to launch. However, I would like to summarize what the tool is and how our community and local businesses will benefit from it. With the app, we can create a customized guide to our community and reward people for visiting places, create incentives for in-person engagement and local spending. Users are rewarded for points for visiting the locations within the community and can redeem their points at reward locations, which will hopefully drive sales if the rewards are tied to purchases. Going back to what Margot had previously mentioned about tourism, this tool will also support our effort to build the tourism sector, promote events, and add more value to a traveler's experience. The app will also be a key component to when we move into the post-pandemic economic recovery in order to encourage and incentivize presence in the community, experiences, and exploration. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, next slide. Perfect. Entrepreneurship development. Entrepreneurship development is another area of focus identified in the updated strategy. Entrepreneurs are an important source of innovation and job growth. By creating new products and services, they stimulate new employment, which contributes to economic growth. The target industry analysis completed by ROI Research on Investment identified several microbusinesses in EG that offer potential for growth and job creation. Entrepreneurship will also be a key component of our post-pandemic economic recovery. To date, we have focused on connecting our residents to business development supports through our partnership with the Town of Georgina and York University through the Business Bounce Back program. This program provided existing entrepreneurs with targeted mentorship and support. We are continuing to collaborate with these partners to develop a follow-up program to the Business Bounce Back, as well as customized programming for emerging entrepreneurs or those considering starting their own business. Next slide, please. One benefit of entrepreneurship development is that not only does it contribute to economic diversification, but it can also be an important tool in our efforts to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. Programming can be developed to meet the specific needs of groups such as youth, newcomers, or other traditionally marginalized groups. New Canadians, for example, often face barriers entering the labor force and can be a significant source of entrepreneurial potential. I'll now turn it back over to Margot to continue the remaining slides of the workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. So we've identified enhanced communications as a fifth strategic priority, because we recognize how significant and potentially disruptive this growth period that we're experiencing can be. We've engaged the Economic Development Advisory Committee to assist on this front, and they have been busy brainstorming ideas for outreach to both the business community and the community at large. And we hope that once pandemic restrictions ease, that we can start having more fulsome conversations with both our residents and business communities and help them to understand and engage with us about this growth process. Next slide, please. We need to build our relationships with businesses now more than ever to ensure that they're aware of and can access programs that will support their recovery and growth. And as we continue to grow as a community, it will be increasingly important to communicate the benefits of growth and how to maintain an open dialogue as we navigate this period of change. Next slide, please. And speaking of growth and change, I think there's an opportunity to have important conversations about how we grow. What is our vision for East Gwillimbury in 20 years, in 50 years, and beyond? Next slide, please. When we engaged council early on in the development of the updated strategy, there was a recurring message encouraging us to be bold. And now is the time to really define what that means. What is our vision for growth? How do we support our community to navigate these significant changes? The pandemic has been a huge reminder of how stressful and uncomfortable uncertainty is. Sustainable development happens when we all have a clear vision for the future and can support projects and leverage opportunities that will get us where we need to go. I'm happy to pause now to solicit council's input on the vision for growth, but I recognize that this is a subject that requires some reflection and is likely worthy of its own facilitated discussion, and certainly merits opportunity for public engagement input. But perhaps I can just plant the seed and give it some thought for now, and we could come back to it for more discussion at the conclusion of the presentation, whatever the preference is.
Do we have burning questions at this time? From members of council, or would we be better to complete the presentation and then go back to any questions that people might have? I'm not seeing. Oh, there's one. Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Ms. Bejan. I just want to go back to an earlier slide. You mentioned you went through the four projects that we had underway, you know, Royal Wood, Sharon Corners, etc. The Welland Group, because it was a mixed use, your development, sorry, the annual tax that you mentioned, there was about 600K. Is that combined commercial and residential tax, or just the commercial component?
I believe that's just the commercial component, but perhaps our treasurer can weigh in. And that was just for phase one. It is a multi-phase project, so that was just for phase one.
Sorry, I was just curious about that.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that was phase one, was just the non-res component of it.
Beautiful. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? I'm not seeing any. We'll move along then, Ms. Beijing.
Thank you. And to this concept of what is our vision for growth? We're engaging the community as part of the updated official plan development process. But as I said, once pandemic restrictions permit, I think we can benefit from more focused discussions about what is our vision for growth, and that will certainly be part of the on a sort of more focused scale, the downtown revitalization efforts. Public engagement is a huge component of that. It's a huge component of everything we do, but I think asking broader questions about, what do we want to look like? Who do we want to be? Now is the time to be asking those questions. Next slide, please. As we approach the end of this presentation, I'd like to offer some food for thought in terms of the bold directions we may wish to pursue in support of sustainable growth. And over the last 2 years, we've made significant progress in advancing the objectives of the business advantage approach. We've enhanced processes and internal communication with the objective of improving the applicant experience throughout the development process. We've also seen a more integrated approach to policy development. One great example is the updated noise bylaw, which offers a really good example of a policy that was developed from the perspective of finding a balance between resident and business needs. Next slide, please. Just under the category of food for thought, one innovative or bold tactic we may wish to explore relates to the timing of development charges. The project represented on the slide here is a great example of one that would benefit from a more business-friendly approach to the collection of development charges, for example. This is a project that would meet an existing demand for industrial space. It's very much needed in the municipality, but through conversations with the proponents, we recognize that the fee structures can represent a barrier. And this is common for new or sort of the non-developers that lack the resources of some of the larger development companies. What we see through the organic growth of the business is that someone will be doing well in their business and want to expand their facilities and hire more people, which is exactly what we want, but they're not necessarily experienced in the development process. So shifting the collection of development charges to occupancy, for example, when leases are activated and the facility is generating revenue, can be much more business friendly in terms of the impact on cash flow. This is just an example of sort of rethinking how we do things. And, typically the share, the municipal share of development charges is much less than the regional portion, but it's something that we potentially could look at that would ultimately have a significant impact on advancing projects just like this one. Next slide, please. A second bold concept that I'd like to bring forward has been developed in collaboration with some local developers, Jordan Colm of Hunsack Homes and architect Chris Patato. This is still very much, in the draft concept phase, but I think it's a really good example of, sort of an exciting idea about where we could go with some innovative out of the box thinking. Next slide, please. The farmstead concept offers a vision for the redevelopment of the civic precinct that not only celebrates our agricultural heritage, but also creates a thriving economic and community hub in line with our complete community objectives. It offers a mix of residential and commercial uses, as well as active public spaces, the costs of which could potentially be offset through the sale of a portion of these municipally owned lands. Next slide, please. I want to reiterate that this is really still very much a high-level concept at this stage, but it demonstrates how a public amenity like a rink or a splash pad can be incorporated with an economic generator such as a commercial space. This farmstead concept includes a permanent home for the farmers market, as well as potential co-working or maker spaces integrated into the commercial development. And when we build new parks or trails, they become important assets for our community, but the maintenance of those assets comes with a cost that must be borne by the municipality in perpetuity. So why not look for innovative ways to incorporate economic activity that'll generate tax revenue while also contributing to vibrant, active, walkable community spaces? This is a concept we hope to apply to our downtown revitalization efforts that Brittany spoke about earlier, and where we intentionally integrate economic development and community building goals. Those vibrant community spaces then attract visitors who spend money and bring additional energy and vitality, which ultimately contributes to the long-term sustainability of not only our economy, but our environment and our community. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Next slide, please. I would invite any comments, questions, suggestions, or food for thought from members of council through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beijing. Very exciting future thinking for all of us. And I know we all have ideas along the way. This is the beginning of something very, very special for East Gwillimbury for sure. I'm sure that there are questions or comments from members of council. Go ahead, please. Councillor Crone, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Ms. Beijing. Thank you for, I think you've been here, a little over 2 years now, and you've brought a nice energy, vitality, and creativity to the role, and I think it's been very welcome. So maybe this isn't a fair question, but I'll ask it anyway. What if budget was no limit? What would you like to see done differently in your department? What if you could wave a magic wand? Where would you like to see things go? Maybe in the long term. We'll put it that way, so it's not so imminent. But what would you like to see happen with your department? What guidance would you say to us as a council?
No pressure with the CAO and deputy vouchers watching, but I do think, in all seriousness, that workforce development, talent attraction piece is something that we are going to need to pay some attention to, and that will require some dedicated time, energy, and specific expertise. So I think not tomorrow, but in the coming months, we want to think seriously about how we incorporate that expertise into our team, because ultimately, not only the projects that are already in play that are going to need that, but it'll support pandemic recovery. We know the nature of work has changed. We haven't even begun to understand the extent to which the nature of work has changed. We see the impact on our service sector. We can't afford to lose our service sector, because without those amenities, we lose, a really vibrant piece of our community. So I think that's, one area that is going to require some attention and support for sure. Just speaking, my own personal wish, I'd love to see us, continue forward on this farm step concept and see where we might go with it as sort of a model for what future development in our community could look like.
Thank you.
Mr. Webster, go ahead.
I thought I'd take the opportunity to respond. So I think that's a great question. I'm going to simply say 2 more Margos would be helpful. Okay, but in all honesty, I think one of the largest challenges that Margot has and that we have moving forward is servicing constraints. And we're one of the few municipalities that, as a designated major growth center by the province, we still have very constrained, not only on the residential side, but also on the employment side. And we're very fortunate that we've got the Woodbine 1 development moving, and we've introduced significant servicing on our employment lands, in the highway employment lands. But Margot constantly has to deal with constrained servicing situations, and where that becomes an encumbrance possibly moving forward. And we're really hopeful that after the provincial election, that there's some solutions that are approved by the province that get some infrastructure in the ground for us, so that we can really deliver that balanced, complete community. So I'm going to add that one in there for you, Margot, and not to take answer her questions because she's doing such a terrific job.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Other questions, comments from members of council? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm not sure if there are answers for this, but the DC deferral thought process interests me. I can see where that would be very important to smaller businesses versus large. I'm wondering, are there other municipalities around that are indeed doing that, and are they doing it on a case-by-case basis, so it's not an across-the-board thing? And I guess my next thought of that is, if it's a case-by-case basis, how do we do it fairly? It seems to me that sounds like a good idea, especially for small business. I'm just not sure that how much would it open us up to ridicule, I guess, of not being fair to someone and giving somebody a break?
Certainly, and through you, Madam Mayor, that's a great question. And I think what most municipalities tend to do is tie it to their job targets. So if it's employment within a specific sector or a certain, wage level that we're targeting, then that's how you could differentiate between who might receive the supports and who doesn't. Georgina, for example, offers a rebate, a fee rebate for specific sectors that they're trying to, or for specific types of development projects that they're trying to attract. So, again, this is just a very much a high level concept. Would need to have conversations, obviously, with our finance folks to see what's achievable, and then think about what are the, who are the, the businesses or the, the development projects that need it the most, and who are we trying to encourage and provide that support to. So we may, I think that's probably the most equitable way to do it, to tie it to our job growth targets.
Thank you. Councillor Persicidi, go ahead, please.
To Ms. Beijing, great job. Very exciting time. I just wonder if we looked at the next 10, 20 years from now, where the city hall of ours going to be. We're going to be staying there. We're going to go on Woodbine. Is it worthwhile looking at Woodbine or Queensville? So where I'm getting to this, so we can have a lot of activities going on for the public to join around that area, like the downtown and Newmarket there that has a skating, and there's a lot of things happen. So I was just wondering how we could build around this vision of people getting together, having fun, but also, we have the service there. Are we looking at, are we gonna, what area is going to be more that people can get to? Is it Woodbine? Is it Queensville? Or is it stay where we are and expand over there? Not that we need to expand right now with going that clean, we have to reduce. But anyway, just a vision, so we can more for entertaining and having fun and restaurants, things happening. It's so we forget about all this craziness that we have around us. Just thinking of a positive thing for the future. But great job, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, I think that's a natural extension of the conversation about the civic precinct. And certainly my colleague, Mr. Karmazin, would probably have some thoughts on, but we recognize that even, our plans for the Civic Center expansion have been impacted by the fact that how much work we do virtually now, and how, if we continue to evolve to a hybrid remote kind of scenario, then we don't necessarily need the physical office space that we thought we were going to need before the pandemic started. So there's all of that kind of conversation, I think, is appropriate when talking about what the Civic Center precinct looks like. So maybe, some version of that farmstead idea is a first phase, and then a second phase might be looking at like where does it make sense for us to be located to be able to best serve our residents and businesses.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, and thank you for that great presentation. I really loved the innovative thinking, and listening to what our CAO, Mr. Webster, had to say on our servicing constraints. I really see the servicing constraints right now as a great opportunity for us to pause and answer some of those questions that you had in your presentation. Where do we want to go? What do we want to look like? It's really hard to have those in-depth conversations when you're in the middle of running a marathon. But if we can take a little break right now to think about some of those things, about sustainability, but what we want it to look like, I think those are all great ideas. Love the farmstead concept. I noticed you said something about residential in there. Is that above the stores? Is that sort of the idea that we're looking for?
But yeah, so the idea, that concept initially has sort of an idea of stacked townhouses and along sort of the Judadone Way, and then sort of a more of a boutique residential at the, I guess would be the western portion of the property. So sort of across, at the far corner of the property. So it would be, so there would be an integration of residential and commercial and public use space.
I love the idea of maybe having like restaurants in there, and to Councillor Portacini's points, making it a real destination for people to go. I know sometimes when you go out for dinner, you don't know where you want to go, so you hit an area and decide when you get there. So having like an area that had restaurants and outdoor dining, and it could be really nice. I absolutely love the concept. I also liked the phased development charges. I think Councillor Foster brought up some good questions around that, but I think there's ways to make that work that will allow for smaller developers. And I think with smaller developers, we're going to get that innovation that we're looking for. So thank you so much. And I'm going to be contemplating those questions that you asked. Very good questions. Thanks.
Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Ms. Bégin. I had a hard time coming up with questions, to be honest, because your presentation was so thorough and wide-ranging. I guess for me, a couple of thoughts. One was the idea of the business retention and expansion. That was a really important part that I didn't feel was there was enough focus placed on that. That it's really hard to attract the investment from outside, but we've got businesses that are here and they do want to grow and respond to our residential growth and the number of customers that they're seeing. So for me, that I think is a really important part of what we're doing. And sort of to flow through into that, the idea of the DC deferral, definitely not necessarily a rebate, but definitely, I would like to hear more about a DC deferral, and also to I guess the best way of putting it is to scale it, because it's not just the large scale development that's $1 million in DCs that we would be, deferring, but we've got concrete examples in our own community of businesses who want to expand, who have cash flow issues, who are still trying to run a business, who are not developers, but who want to grow their business. And they're seeing some issues. Mr. Valchich will remember one from a couple of years ago where they purchased a property and were trying to rezone it and redevelop it. And they ran into some serious cash flow issues. So I think for me, it's that scale and scope and making sure that that whatever deferral program we have also matches the scale and scope of the project. So if it's a building permit fee that needs to be deferred, then that's one thing. Or if it's $1 million in DCs that has to be deferred, that's another thing. But that we should still have the ability to respond to that need. I think that's really important. Even just a grant program for some of those areas that we're trying to attract or grow or build is also another thing. Even in my private life, in real estate and dealing with commercial clients, that's some of the things that they find attractive is, well, if I buy this property and I invest in the storefront, then I can get a grant to improve the signage, and I can get a grant to improve accessibility and get a wheelchair door in. That makes a big difference when you're looking at an investment property that's commercial in nature or industrial in nature. So I thought I would share that, and I would love to hear more about what sorts of things that we can do to support that workforce development and the talent development. That we talk about having a really well-educated workforce, but what does that really mean? And then just finally, as far as the farmstead, I have a knee-jerk reaction to it, and that is I don't want to sell private to public land to private interests in order to develop. There's an application for something similar to what we thought was pretty exciting, with a lot of restaurants and an intensification of businesses literally across the street, just literally north of that street, across Judah Doan. And so I will keep an open mind, but my knee-jerk reaction is we worked hard to acquire that land, to invest in a civic precinct plan. And I certainly need to hear more, but it's just a knee-jerk reaction that I'm having. It's new. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Councillor Morton and then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Ms. Bejean. You talked about the downtown revitalization. Mount Albert has that village association, and I happen to chair that. And I know that Councillor Crone has been to some of our meetings as well. And we have actually walked the street to find out, you know, buildings and what they would like to see during that time. And my one concern is that, because Scott and I have talked about this, is the historic buildings all along that whole street. And I'm concerned about how we can work with that and yet not destroy the history of Mount Albert that's been there for so many years.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I think that, you know, that's a really important question, and I think that's part of we're going to be engaging some outside help to assist us in both benchmarking to be able to make sure that we understand, you know, where we are now and what, you know, our efforts having an impact. But, you know, the idea of preserving and celebrating the heritage and exploring opportunities for facade improvement, like that's already part of the remit of the consultants that we're going to engage. Equally important is making sure that there's business continuity throughout the process. You know, from an engineering perspective, I think the revitalization is more about, realigning lighting and parking and things like that to make it more accessible. But we also want to make sure that businesses we're paying attention to, their skill development, their ability to be able to, access online tools to maintain continuity through periods of disruption. If the road is torn up, that kind of thing, how can they still continue to operate and reach their customer base? All of that stuff is part of the consideration. So I think in terms of, how the space or how the place looks is very much going to be determined through the public engagement, and that will integrate, the parks folks and, in terms of, what public spaces are created. I know that, they've been talking about public art and opportunities for that. So all of that would be, the MAVA and all of the business community are going to be a really key component in that conversation, in terms of determining what the look and feel of the downtown we're striving to build, so that it's not done in isolation of the people it impacts.
Yeah, I understand that too, and I know that there is some stuff that's moving ahead now. But I think it would be nice if Scott and I were kept apprised of what some of that is happening, because we're the ones that are getting the questions on some of the people that are there. So if we could be sort of brought in on what's happening with that, it would be appreciated.
Certainly. Through you, Madam Mayor, I think you're going to be seeing an update on the RFP process that went out on sort of the engineering side of things, and then we're just in the process of developing an RFQ for the economic development and business side of that process. So still hope to have that either later this month or early February, have engaged someone to assist us in that conversation, and then I think bringing all the stakeholders, yourselves included, together to sort of discuss what the ultimate vision is the most important first step.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I actually had a conversation yesterday with the CAO during our call. But when you we talk about entrepreneurship, and I think in today's economy, we may have a number of people that are resorting to some sort of a home-based business. And I know that this is walking a fine line because we're talking about a home-based business that may not necessarily be within a place where it's zoned properly to do that. But having said that, lots of these home-based businesses are the ones that once they, maybe they've closed down a business because it's not good right now and they have to start doing something at home. But some of these home-based businesses are the ones that may end up opening a storefront and hiring some staff, and their business grows. Is there a way for us as a municipality to, I don't want to say support that, because I don't want to say that we're going to support bringing businesses into a residential area, but is there a way that we can be more understanding of how that happens? And I mean, we don't want a business running where somebody has 10 employees coming in every day and parking all over the street, but is there a way that we can, I guess, somehow understand better what those home-based businesses are doing and how they're running, given that the economy is the way it is?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you. I mean, I certainly hope so. That's one of our key objectives on the entrepreneurship development priority, because one of the things that the target industry analysis uncovered is that we've got a pretty significant cohort of micro businesses, most of those in sort of the information economy. So they're not necessarily generating foot traffic to the door that would contravene zoning. They're doing things like working in technology, they're working in the film industry, doing editing, those kinds of things. But yes, that every micro business is an opportunity to grow and scale and eventually become, a storefront or, bricks and mortar business with more employees. So one of the things we hope to do in the coming year is to be able to identify who those businesses are, bring them together, give them opportunities to network and build a bit of an ecosystem, and a couple of our EDAC volunteers are working on this right now in terms of a strategy to be able to deliver some business supports to that specific target market. Because we've seen examples in other areas of the country. Vernon, BC, for example, had a very successful program to reach out to home-based businesses and to be able to sort of bring them out of the woodwork and try to connect with them. So hopefully to use some of those lessons learned to do the same thing here.
I think we all know about many home businesses we've read over the years. I mean, many, many years ago, and some very recently, that started in somebody's basement, and now they are very high-end businesses and continue to grow into communities. So I hope that there's some way that perhaps a facility may be available, that even they move from home into something that might be able to suit them for that intermediate portion before they actually venture out into purchasing or leasing something of a greater but I think it's our opportunity to make sure that those businesses survive, and some of them, are really struggling right now, but that they are able to really take off and be something special in East Gwillimbury. So I think we could spend a whole meeting on that in itself. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Sorry, trouble with my microphone. What sort of restrictions do we have on home-based businesses? What is allowed to occur in a residential area and what is not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in a nutshell, it's a home-based business. If it's generating foot traffic or customers to the door, is typically somewhat restricted. I mean, there are some exceptions, like, a home-based accounting firm, for example. It's not, going to pick up your files, that kind of thing. But generally, we don't want to have, a store or retail operation operating out of a business, but generally what we're seeing is sort of the service sector or service related, like financial services, and technology related businesses, sales, that are where the sales are conducted online, those kinds of things. So those typically don't contravene our zoning bylaws.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I guess I just had one here. What's our greatest challenge today now, moving forward?
Whew. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, honestly, I think it is that conversation about growth, because this, yourself as someone who grew up here and has seen such a radical change, and we're as a designated growth municipality, the projections that we're not even talking about doubling in size, we're talking about growing exponentially. And so ensuring that people have an understanding about both the benefits and challenges that growth will bring, and understand their place in it, so that we continue to grow collectively as a community.
I think the public engagement is going to be very important. We have people that have lived in our community their entire lives, and their parents and grandparents, and we have people who moved in this past weekend. And so the public engagement to make sure that we are listening and we are going to address issues. We all know of people that we've spoken to over the years that they wanted the town to remain exactly the same as it was the day that they moved in. And we have people that say all the green space and all the fields that are there, that's why they moved here. So I think that's going to be the challenge for elected officials, particularly in making sure that we listen and we hear the concerns and take time to deliberate on it as well. It's a huge change for East Gwillimbury. It's going to be something very different than any other municipality in York Region for sure, with us being almost 80% green and farm fields and whatever. However, in those areas where we have the ability to grow, this project will see massive changes in those areas. And people came for a reason, and we want to make sure that they stay as well. They too could be the staff of many of these buildings as time goes on. So thank you very much. Wonderful. I know that this is just the beginning of many discussions, and I imagine everybody that is on the call today will be back to you and be sharing that with many people. Congratulations to Brittany. I'm really happy for her. We're all thrilled that she's going to Waterloo. Good university, and look forward to her future as well with us. So thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DeClemente, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We have a second topic on our workshop today, and that's charting a new path for information technology services delivered and council workshop.
Madam Mayor, I was wondering, I'm just a floor above you, even though we're in separate rooms being socially distanced here. We have some options here now. Lately, we've been sort of moving into lunch hour, taking a break. And so this today, the workshop plan was, we knew that the economic development workshop was going to take the lion's share. We think the IT strategy one will be much more contained. And then we do have what we feel is probably a fairly short in-camera session as well. I'm wondering if council would be apt to possibly taking a very short break right now and then moving into the second session. We might push a little past 1, but I think if everyone would be willing to maybe take a late lunch hour, we could take a tackle at trying to capsulate this rather than it spilling into the afternoon in a more fulsome way. So maybe my proposal might be, if you're okay with it, maybe a 10-minute break right now, and then we'll move into the second part of the workshop and see how we do.
I'm seeing nods from everyone. So with that, thank you very much for that suggestion. My clock is saying 20 to 12, and I would say 10 to 12. We would come back at that point and continue on our plans for the day. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll take a recess, a very short recess, and be back shortly. Thank you.
life.
Thank you very much. We're still in our workshop. Item number 2, charting a new path for information technology services delivery council workshop. With that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is part 2 of today's session, and it's an important one as well. Just before I turn it over to Deputy Velchich and Scott McNeil, I just wanted to take a moment and express appreciation from my office and from council as well of the terrific job. And, you know, I recently had an opportunity to talk to all members of council, and they all expressed high regard for how during COVID, we've been able to transform our businesses and our council sessions and introduce modernization efforts into our organization. And as a matter of fact, Mark Velchich is a sought after speaker now in the municipal sector, as he's been profiled at the CAO's annual conference and others, where EG is positioned as a real leader in innovation and transformation. And we have many municipalities looking out to us and asking how do they too become a preferred employer in these type of practices. And again, a lot of it goes to the people, and Mark's done a terrific job in his mandate. And Scott McNeil, today you'll hear from Scott. I don't think council's heard a lot directly from him, but you're going to see a real good assessment of where we are with the IT agenda and where we should be getting to going. And so I'll turn it over to Deputy Velchich again.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Webster, and for your kind words. I appreciate it. And we are certainly very proud of the team that we have, and that the accomplishments that we've been able to make with the support of council and the senior management team over the last couple of pretty challenging years. But I want to go back, Madam Mayor, just in some introductory comments before I turn it over to Mr. McNeil, and maybe pick up on a comment that Councillor Crothers made earlier in our meeting, and it was unrelated, but she talked about the importance of taking advantage of these times where you have a pause, and then looking at sort of taking advantage of that time to look forward to see, you know, what you want to look like strategically, what you need to focus on, how you can position yourself for success moving into the future. And if I go back to 2016, just before we had the first big wave of YDSS growth, we had about a 10-fold increase in building permits issued from 2015 to 2016. A phenomenal change in the pace at which our organization had to respond to growth pressures. And we went through about 2 years of that, and there was actually a lull at that point economically in the housing market that we took advantage in late 2018 to look at not only how we were positioned to deal from a planning and building services point of view and engineering, you know, to deal with the rapid growth, but how we were positioned operationally. And so at that time, Mr. McNeil, his company's Diverse Systems Group, came in and helped us start to build an information management strategy. And as part of that, we developed a change management program, a program that helped us focus on continuous improvement called the Municipal Peak Performance Program. And shortly thereafter, we were very fortunate that the province came along and started to offer some additional money for modernization efforts. So it really sort of kickstarted a program that we were already developing for our own use, regardless of whether we had additional funding. But it really sort of, you know, put it into a place where we were able to accelerate it, I guess is the best word to use. And what we didn't anticipate at the time was how important that thinking, that planning, that continuous improvement and change management program would be in dealing with the pandemic. And so along in 2020 came the global pandemic, which, although started as a focus on health and a health challenge, quickly also became an economic disruptor, and quite frankly, probably the largest business disruptor that we've seen in many years that forced us to look at how we delivered programs and services in a different way. And what happened as well over that time period, it kind of reminds me of, for those that remember the anticipation of Y2K, and the fact that we thought information systems in the world was going to stop turning at the beginning of the year 2000. Information services staff and those with any sort of technology qualifications and background suddenly became very incredibly valuable as they were preparing for what the unknown of transferring from 1999 to 2000 on information systems operations and information management around the globe. And interestingly, we're seeing in a way a different form of that type of demand now, as we've gone through approaching 2 years now of transforming not only the way we do business, the way we collaborate, the way we communicate in EG, but quite frankly, the way it's being done globally. We are not unique in that regard. So one of the consequences we've seen of that is not only a lot of pressure on our information technology and information management team, and who have done a fabulous job with Mr. McNeil's leadership in there, but we've also seen we're seeing more postings and more opportunities than we've seen in years, and demand on these types of skills. And as a result, we've had a few pretty key staff leave for other opportunities in the last several weeks to take opportunities in other organizations. So although that causes us to have a little bit of short-term pressure, I think what you're going to hear from in Mr. McNeil's presentation today is it does also create somewhat of an opportunity for us to look at his vision for how we sort of organize our information technology and information management services, and resource it, accordingly, with a kind of a fresh focus moving forward. So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, mention by name Randy Bell, who has been just a pillar through this period. And I want to just give you an example just from yesterday to show you, how relevant his contribution is to us. Yesterday, we're understanding, because of cold weather conditions, there was some damage to some Rogers fiber that impacted our feed into our civic center and to the general area in East Gwillimbury that the civic center resides. And that was the reason that our meeting yesterday was impacted and postponed until this morning. But Randy and Anthony and Scott and the team worked with the Rogers technicians yesterday through the day, and I can tell you into late last evening, to ensure that new fiber was installed. It wasn't in our building, but it was in the area to sort of stabilize things for today. So that's the type of dedication and support that we have, that we're very fortunate to have on our team. So with that as a little bit of a backdrop, Madam Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McNeil, who has been working with us now consistently through the pandemic, and has been able to look at the operation through a little bit of an independent lens and give us a sense of, from his perspective, where we've been, where we are, and most importantly, where we see ourselves going moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McNeil.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council, and thank you, Mr. Valchik. The focus of my presentation today is to identify and assess past and current trends and actions so that we can position the town's IT function to meet the needs of the town currently and in the future, while also maximizing the investment the town's made in some of their IT assets, including staff, who are a key part of the process. So today the lens we're going to take is we're going to look at the organization, the IT function from a pre-COVID lens, and then current state, basically, last month, previous month, and then the future state, and a lot of what changes need to be made to prepare us for the future state, and not only deal with the staff challenges that have been presented in twice today, or at least the competition for staff and talent, but also the changing landscape and where staff would work out of and stuff like that. So I think by keeping an open mind, we'll continue to attract and secure the services of key resources that were going to help us, continue to modernize services throughout the coming years and beyond. So traditionally, IT staff, pre-COVID for sure, and in some organizations, hired as maintainers and IT generalists. Used to be strong generalists, used to be the term to describe many types of IT people, where they needed to have a little bit of a lot, and which is true and will always be the case, a lot of skills. But in more realistic terms, and nowadays, we need specialists, we need SharePoint specialists, we need DBAs, we need specialized individuals so they can maximize their contribution to the changing service landscape. We need GIS professionals. That's kind of a known within a municipal space, but we need to specialize in certain areas. I don't promote that we need to hire full-time resources in these areas, and a lot of what we say today is continuing with the shamrock method of using services or securing the access to services as needed on a project-based or on a temporary basis. So that's what we're promoting today, and we're staying with the theme of the organization, again, along the shamrock method. Staff typically used to, we didn't monitor a lot in the IT space previously to COVID. There was some monitoring, and I don't want to say that we weren't doing a great job, because the team did an amazing job, not only pre-COVID, but through COVID, and they are today. But the old adage used to be, when it breaks, we'll fix it. And that's no longer the case. The dependency on advanced software features and access to information is vital, and it's no longer 8 to 4, 9 to 5. It's 24/7, and staff really require access to information wherever they are. It's not only physically in front of the keyboard. Often in a lot of roles, access to their phones and stuff like that. Information should be pervasive and accurate and dynamic, and that's really the biggest push that's changing the landscape today. In the past, we didn't really spent a lot of time on data integration and access to information. That's one of the first things that I undertook in late 2018 and early 2019, is to determine areas where quickly we can improve, low-hanging fruit as we call it. We can improve access to information for key staff members. And by doing so, we realized that there's a number of integrations that we also could be producing, where we could provide a little bit better data analytics and visualization, which is really, really fancy word for reporting, right? So there is some significant opportunities there. Project management is something we can, in my eyes, we can always be refining and making it a greater importance, knowing the current status of any initiative, and allowing senior management and other management groups and subject matter experts to assess the current state and make decisions going forward is really the core fundamental of project management. Limited application and solution development. Well, we don't need to be a solution development shop. Nowadays, with cloud-based technologies, we have an opportunity to secure access to really advanced features and through cloud-based solutions and such like that. So the need to develop in-house solutions is no longer a requirement nowadays. It was a traditionally one, and it actually ended up costing a lot more in a lot of cases. So overall, we have to become more solution oriented and less about, does a really neat technical feature work, and do we like it as IT professionals? We may, but at the end of the day, it's about our users and what their needs are, and solutions need to be oriented to what our users need. And the IT team has done a really good job with this, and unfortunately, we need to do a little bit more work with finding the right vendors for this organization. I would say that a lot of the vendors kind of take a secondary approach to some of the smaller municipal clients, and I've noticed this, and we've done a lot of work to improve the situation. But we need to align our vendors with the needs of the organization and make sure that our vendors, I often say, well, we need to manage our vendors, and we really do need to manage our vendors. So that's traditionally some of the experiences and things that I've noticed traditionally. I would say that we've done a lot of work in most, if not all, of these bullet points here over the last year and a half. So it's not we're lacking something here. It's part a little bit of insight of some of the challenges we had to face over the last year and a half, on top of COVID, of course. So again, I did mention previously about cloud-based computing. I don't have any hesitation. I think cloud-based solutions could be as secure, if not more secure, than what we predominantly used to call on-premise solutions. I think the security and some of the technologies and the innovation on cloud-based solutions is always worth pursuing, and we should keep an open mind to as well. digitization of forms and processes is something we're embarking as part of a new initiative starting in this year, is digitization of forms. And it's a way that we can improve residents' access to services through digital forms, and it also improves staff interactions and processes between people and departments by digitizing forms and moving away from a paper-based operation, which our SharePoint project, the ECM project that was approved about 1.5 years ago, is definitely the foundation for us to be able to move forward in the digital space. Without question, we're in my perspective is around the right path there from a technology perspective. So the IT's role is becoming more of it moved away from connectivity, now about data integration, visualization of solutions. And that's something where our GIS professionals have led in a number of initiatives. We know that the fire alarm assessment tool that was used and implemented last year was a significant undertaking there. That it would bring operational data to staff in the field. And that's really the key now, is ubiquitous access information is everything that we should be focusing on now as an organization, so that people have information where they require it, when they require it. And then again, I just talk about a little bit more about the modern days. Vendor selection and management is critical to success, and that's something that it's really important to us. And unfortunately, everything we're talking about today in the modern age is going to continue to grow exponentially. It's going to be a little bit more challenging for us, not challenging from a technical perspective, but to continue to meet the demand for access to information. And the team has been very efficient in being able to do that, and we're trying to make sure that we have the right resources that we can be efficient. But the demand for new access to information is probably outgrowing our ability right now, but that's why we're investing in tools and technologies to enable us and staff to produce a lot of their own information and access and do their own visualization and analytics. So we're definitely along the way there. And I think some of the investments we've made are definitely they're going to set the foundation for the future. So pre-COVID, the department was quite streamlined. I would say we're under the leadership of Mr. Bell. We basically had a manager and an IT technician, and GS coordinator and GIS technician. So we basically had 3 full-time staff and then 1 contract staff. And it's a very dedicated team. There's lots of success here and lots of positives here. It's a very dedicated. I've never seen a group of staff be as committed to customer service, maybe too much in some degree, right? We tend to sway away from standards just to keep our users happy. And that's a really good position to come from. But at the end of the day, we have to maintain our standards. And so I think staff have did an amazing job from a customer service perspective. And they definitely will definitely focus on doing more with less, find a way. And they're very innovative that way. And so that's a really strong point here. There was very good collaboration with our partners in other communities, and we continue to do that with Georgina and the region. We continue to look at opportunities to collaborate new services, and we're having conversations about combining skills from other organizations, municipalities in the GIS area and other areas, so that we can maximize each other's investments. And again, we've talked about the integration of information, which is key going forward. Basic security was performed previously. It was about restricting access. It's a lot more complicated nowadays. And under Randy Bell and the team, we've implemented a number of proactive and proactive solutions that allow us to monitor the environment 24/7. So we're in a good shape security-wise. I'm not going to be overconfident there. That's kind of a constant front that we have to manage. But I would say the investments that were made previously, and we're in very good shape. And we have one recommendation around the security side that we're going to make a little later on in this presentation. So obviously there's the increased we're going to increase the backfill and reduce the siloed of roles. So we basically worked a lot. Each technical area has a primary and secondary resource, so that anytime somebody needs a vacation or anybody needs to try something new, we make sure that we create opportunities for staff. At the same time, we make sure that our primary services are maintained, and staff feel comfortable taking on new roles. And we're doing a lot better job at tracking incidents. We can do our own trend analysis on some of our technologies, and it helps us determine what future changes need to be made. We've already started to increase our integration of information. We're going to continue to do so, and that's being led. There's a very high demand from our user community and the organization about increasing data integration across all all functions in the organization. It's something that we're definitely going to continue to expand on. One of the things we got through, helped us get through COVID, was the standardization of hardware and software. So unfortunately, by doing so, that resulted in us having to say at a certain point where we can't maintain all the different versions of all the different software, and we had to standardize some of our tool sets here. By doing so, we stabilize the environment. We think we can provide a better service by standardizing, and not having two virtual meeting solutions, standardizing on one as we did with MS Teams versus Zoom or webinars or things like that. It really helps the IT staff and allows them to become more experts on these solutions and better support staff across the organization. So that's the pre-COVID landscape. Now the current state is by being able to track our service requests inbound, we're able to determine where we should focus our resources and look at trends and see if we need to make further investments in technology or training. And so we're basically at a state right now where staff, now they're still very busy, but they're receiving less than 5 service requests a day, which means, honestly, except for the anomaly that happened yesterday, we have a very stable technology environment. And it's really not only a testament to the IT team here, it's staff following our processes and really taking seriously the feedback we provide them and the guidance we provide them and some of the instructions that we provide them as well. We all need to work together to stabilize our technology environment. And it's through some of the advanced security courses, it's really reduced even the impact of some of the intrusions that we've had in the environment that consume a lot of time and energy. If we notice that we might have had a security breach. So as an example, a typical security breach probably consumes 10 to 20 hours of staff time just doing a basic evaluation. So by staff really adhering to some of the standards and policies that we put in place, it really is making a difference for the IT team, and it allows us to be very efficient and maintain a bit of a small team, because everybody's buying in, everybody's oars in the water here, and everybody's contributing and helping us out. So it's quite incredible that we're able to maintain the size of technology environment that we have with the staff levels that we have. And again, I would say thank you very much for supporting us and allowing us to do some really key technology investments, because it really has made a difference. And so again, we're going to continue to provide, and as you know, recently, one of our recommendations a little later on is to continue to provide training to staff. And one of the basic principles of delivering a new solution is to develop user documentation and system documentation. I promote the implementation of changes that must include user documentation throughout the process as well. It's all about confidence, and the more confident people are at using technology, the more readily they'll use it. And that's our job as IT professionals, to make technology easy to use. And if we provide something to you in a way that it's convoluted and it's not clear and people don't have confidence using it, we haven't done our job as IT professionals. And that's, at the end of the day, it's about making technology easy to use. And so that's one of our pillars going forward as well. And we're going to continue the data visualization and awareness. We're going to continue to build on the demand for improved access to information throughout this organization is leading edge here. And we just need to make sure that we have the tools, and we do. The processes, we're starting to build the processes out, and the people, the training, our staff needs the skills required to be able to maximize availability of information for our clients here, the departments. At the end of the day, all of these things end up being better services for our residents, more efficient services to our residents, and better decision-making. Well, the future state, a lot of this is a repeat, but a lot of this is back and forth because it's degrees of progress that we're making here. This is something I've always envisioned for this organization, and we're now ready to embark on this in 2022, is the universal integration of information across the organization. We have standards in place. They're below the surface. You don't see them as we have standards in place where we have access to information. We have standards on a database side. So I'll tell you, technology integration is probably my most exciting service that I provide, even though it's probably pretty dry to most people, is being able to integrate information across solutions, systems, departments is really at the advent of innovation on my part, because we can provide information to allow people to make more informed decisions, better decisions in the operations and at the management level. And we've also standardized on information management standards across the organization, where again, as part of that is a database, but outside of the corporate information, GIS standards are now being developed so that departments have a little bit of independence now And we've actually established what we call a GIS or Information Management Working Team for GIS Solutions. And unfortunately, we lost a couple of members of that team over the last few weeks or so. We still have some really good resources in the organization. And what we're trying to do is standardize how we develop GIS information so that it's more consistent and people are more comfortable using it. Again, across the board, the more comfortable people are using information, the more they will depend on it going forward. We're really promoting business solutions training for staff. Recently, we promoted a survey over the course of month of December, where staff have an anonymous way of providing us with information about what type of training they'd like to receive. And so what we're doing is trying to promote, and we're giving people the independent, an independent assessment tool where they can ask for any type of training, and we're going to do our best to provide it all within 2022. Again, we want to make people comfortable using technology. So some of this is repeat, and I know this is a bit of a dry presentation, and this was at one point quite more extensive, but I wanted to provide you a brief today. Is one of the ways that we can really make a difference with innovation and service delivery is confirming technology skills on the way in. New staff nowadays require, in my perspective, and many senior managers in the organization, skills that promote innovation and the use of information in decision making. So a lot of these tools now that we've implemented as part of Microsoft's strategy under the Microsoft 365 solution is staff now have access to tools that 10 years ago you required a DBA to produce for them. So staff now have a tool set of digital forms, and they can actually manage information without requiring the specialized skills of a DBA. We'd like to maximize that. We've created an opportunity where staff can start to produce some of their own information. They can do their own data analytics and visualization, and we'd like to continue to promote that. The best way to do that is to ensure that all inbound staff have a skill set level that promotes independence around visualization and analytics. Well, something we've started a conversation with the HR team under Ms. Collette, and we're going to continue to do so in that area. And I previously mentioned about the business solutions training for all staff. The survey, amazingly, we got about 80% uptake on our survey across the board from staff, which is amazing. And we're really proud of that fact because we really want to take care of people's needs around information, and so they, again, are more confident using it. One of the things we'd like to talk about is we're realigning staff roles to be more consistent with the primary tool set. We want to make sure that people, again, our IT staff are really important. We want to make sure that they're actually working within a paradigm that they're comfortable working within. We want to stretch them a little bit. We want to create opportunities for people to have a chance to learn more new skills and take on new challenges. But we want to do it in a way that they're comfortable at their pace to a degree. And so that's something we've really done as well. We've spent a lot of time making sure that staff are comfortable at any time. I wouldn't want anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself as one of the, is your advisor here. And so staff, I've really taken upon myself to make sure they're comfortable in their roles and some of the things we're asking them to do for us. One of the things we're promoting is the hiring an information management lead to oversee information solutions. So it goes back to this slide here. This is a department that we're promoting in the future is the role that I currently provide you on an ad hoc basis as Director of Information Management. This is on the right side of your screen is the Information Solutions Team Lead. This is somebody that would actually prioritize the integration of information across the organization and would lead the implementation of new solutions and services as it relates to information and features. And so it's a primary. We have Randy and his team, Mr. Bell and his team on the left side of this IT operations, and they're primarily responsible for network systems and administration, application support, and cybersecurity. And that's really key to keeping the ship running and keeping the ship moving forward. But the new and innovation will be brought to the organization through focus on information management solutions. This role was formerly this is something that we've been managing on an ad hoc basis, and this area would primarily be, again, responsible for solutions delivery and the PMO function. And basically, the legend at the bottom talks about the blue is the permanent staff or currently being provisioned, contract staff, which we depend on a number of contract service providers under the network and system and administration. And we're going to continue to build on the left side of this model here with using the Shamrock model to gain access to specialized services. But at the same time, we're actually promoting the the development of the information management group and with the GIS resources and a future database administrator as needed. So I get back to the key findings and next steps is we're gonna prioritize the hiring of an information management lead to lead that group. This is a backfill for a position that was previously under the CIS area. A gentleman named Mr. LaForest, Patrick LaForest, who was very capable data scientist, data engineer, data professional, and he led a number of initiatives on maximizing the use of GIS information in the operations and under the asset management function. So there's an agreement in place to move that resource over to the IT function and perform more of a senior role. Now, unfortunately, we have to hire for this position. Well, it's fortunate in a way, but we enjoyed working with Mr. LaForest. But what we're doing is trying to decentralize information management as a key skill set within the IT function. We're going to backfill for the GIS analyst and the GIS solution developer as well. And later this month, there's going to be 3 new postings: one for the information management and lead, GIS analyst, and the solution developer. We're also in the process of hiring on an as needed basis, an IT security consultant. This was consistent with auditors' reports and some of our previous presentations as well, to ensure that in the event of a breach, that we have the right skills available readily within the first 30 minutes or first hour of an incident being identified. It's important to have the right to make the right decisions and make the right moves immediately. That's something we're embarking as well. And we're, again, back to the application support and training, we're prioritizing that. We're going to backfill with part-time temporary resources so that we can maintain the demand for application support across the organization and provide training opportunities and information so that staff feel more comfortable using the technology. We're also going to build out the PMO to continue to deliver the modernization program. This is all budgeted funds and approved by council, and thank you very much. But to bring in the services of a senior, very experienced project manager that can take some of, to maintain some of the key projects, because staff are learning about project management and learning about how to make change within an operating environment. But there's a lot of work. There's more demand right now than we're able to manage right now, and I think it would be very beneficial to the organization to spend some of its modernization, the already approved modernization dollars on an experienced project manager. And I've mentioned a couple of times, but the DBA support, we're going to previous for the last year and a half, that's primarily been a full-time role. We've made a lot of advancements in developing an information model where we can readily produce data analytics and visualization. The need right now is not as strong as it was previously for the DBA specific skill set. So we've transitioned that as of November of last year back to a part-time role. And we currently do not have somebody on staff, but we envision in February timeframe, we'll probably bring somebody back on board where we would be able to use the skills of an experienced DBA as well. So I hope I've provided you with a pretty decent insight into some of the things we're doing here around providing improved access to information while maintaining a secure environment. And so I would welcome any questions you have right now. And thank you for the opportunity to not only provide services to the town of East Gwillimbury, but to present to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNeil. Questions? Councillor DePutatIon, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. McNeil, one of the things that I sort of struck upon was the data analytics and data visualization as being, this one of the skill sets of the future that we need to hire for. It seems to me that that's more and more important, especially for our staff who are dealing with a lot of information, is how do you digest all of that information? So I applaud that aspect of it. My question relates to sort of I guess what I'll call the future state slide. Obviously, we know what our situation looks like right now. How long do you think that it will take for us to transition to this newer structure? And we've invested a significant amount of money in modernization and digitization. How much more do we need?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor, thank you for the question. I would say, well, I'm a strong believer in the iterative approach to anything about change, and so I wouldn't say that we need to scale up and have quickly be in a position where we can we're over delivering, and I think to bring staff along and to help them with their current skill set and knowledge is, I would say by the middle of 2022, what you see on the slide as a future state will be in place and functioning with some of my guidance. Again, I have 30 years experience in integrating information and delivering, strategic services and products. I really do strongly believe that a bit of a pragmatic approach to this amount of change is probably necessary. And we have to make sure that the people we put in these positions in various roles are comfortable again and performing at a rate that we need them to perform. So I would say by the middle of this year, you'll see this in place, and we'll have all the new hires. I mean, there's a significant amount of hires associated with this as well. I'd say, full-time and part-time, there's probably 6 or 7, new hires or resources that are required here. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I have excellent support throughout the organization, and I think by that time we'll be in good shape. As relates to the budget, I'll defer that to Mr. Valchek, if you don't mind, Councillor. I can tell you that I've never worked so hard. I actually am. I enjoy trying to do more with less. I do take it on as a personal challenge, and I believe the way that we're spending money in this organization, I'll honestly say to you that I've never been more efficient with the use of capital. And I promote that because I accepted a bit of a challenge. It's easy to hire the IBMs. I'm a former IBMer. I used to work for big banks and insurance companies, and I actually and staff actually I think appreciate. Though at times we need to invest significantly, and other times we don't. And I really do monitor the expense and some of I pride myself on being able to find cost-effective resources for this organization. So, and I know that sounds like a bit of a spiel, and it's not. I think this is a very efficient organization, has a history of doing so, and we're continuing to use that model going forward. I can see a lot of municipal partners overspending, and it's something that I'm not trying. I see a lot of it in the municipal space and government agencies, and I'll say, without a doubt, I'm thrilled and impressed the way that dollars are spent in this organization, and I'm proud to be part of that. I'll be honest with you. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I have one. I'm just wondering about the new hires, Mr. McNeil. There are a number of them, and if other organizations are hiring as we are, is the market rich with individuals enough that would go around?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an excellent question. I guess, and I hate to say this way, but we're going to find out very soon, because at the later today we're going to be posting the information management lead. I'll tell you, we've been a little bit proactive here. Is through our HR leadership, we did a market survey of the role, and through our refined role description that I created, and with Mr. Valchek's help and others, I think we might be in good shape. But we may be more challenged with the GIS roles than the information management lead. Even this morning, York Region posted three new positions for GIS leads. We may need to be a little bit open-minded on how they provide the services. I think we may need to be open to the fact that maybe some of these resources are remote, more than 5 days a week. Not more than 5 days a week, but a couple of days a week, or even more than that is what I'd like to say. So, but I'm also happy to kind of help bring the right resources into the organization as well, and try to create opportunities for them to grow their role and their knowledge. So I think we're going to know very soon, Madam Mayor. And so thank you for the question. I hope I answered it effectively.
Thank you. It just seems to me that if we're venturing out on these initiatives, that there will be both municipalities and private sector as well. And I just am concerned about the pool of people that are out there, and would be disappointed if we were all set for moving forward and not having either a choice or the right people at this time. But I'm sure you've thought of that as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to you, Madam Mayor, I apologize. In fact, we've actually went a little bit further as well, as we've started having conversation with the region and other municipalities to see what we can do if they have skill shortage and gaps, as well as how we can work together, right, wholeheartedly, how we can work together to maximize the investments. And so we've actually later today have a meeting with Georgina to talk about that specific topic as well. And we've had conversation with the region as well. So we're doing everything we can. We're trying to be a little proactive here. Thank you.
Wonderful. I guess we really won't know until we put it out there and find out who's interested in EG. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Persichini, go ahead.
Yes, to Mr. McNeil, how do we compare ourselves with the other municipality on the technology and how we set? And the next question is, what's this all going to cost us? Is this part of the budget process? How does it work? You know, just give us an idea.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Councillor Pertuccini. I'll take the second part first because I think it's the more meat on the bone. We're not asking for any new funds to implement the program as outlined today. It was all approved as part of the 2022 capital cycle, and especially under the modernization program. So we don't expect at this point. These are current staff complements and or capital budgets that have been approved up front of the modernization. What makes us the differentiator and why people want to work for EG? I would say that we've implemented a tool set here, the Microsoft platform, and we've standardized in a way that makes it really easy for people to do their jobs around data analytics and information. But it's not only about having the right technology staff, it's giving staff in general the knowledge and that comfort feeling so they can do a lot of the data analytics themselves. Instead of me asking them, what does this data mean? If we can present the tools that are available today that have already been invested in, if we can help staff feel comfortable in using the tools that they have, they can actually do a lot of this on their own. So we're actually just changing and modifying some of the roles and capabilities that staff have. And through training and coaching, and the coaching that I like to bring to the organization and others, is staff are learning how to do that on their own. And we provide support mechanisms. We don't have to lean against them to support them, but we are there to catch them and help them with some of the complicated technology elements. But I think a lot of the information management solutions that are going to come forward in the future are going to come from staff across the organization, not just from your technical resources. That's a change in landscape. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. We do have a resolution in front of it. Thus be it resolved that the Economic Development Strategy Council workshop presentation dated January 11th, 2022 be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persichini, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. McNeil. Gives us a lot of food for thought in the coming months and, well, even weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Our second presentation is charting a new path for information technology. No, just a moment. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. That section has been completed. You're now into item G, which is closed session.
Thank you. Yes, I am. With that, we have closed session this afternoon. Be it resolved that council proceed into a closed meeting of municipal council at 12:35 to deal with the following matter: personnel matter about an identifiable or identifiable individuals, Municipal Act Section 2392, B, personnel matters, and council appointment committee's appointment updates. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DiClemente, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Just give us a moment to go into private session.
And we're back live.
So rise and report of our closed meeting. Be it resolved that council rise and report from our closed meeting, which I did, and that council endorse all direction provided to staff the closed meeting of municipal council held on January 11th. Item H is a confirming bylaw. Go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, you would just need to pass a resolution to rise and report. We just need to do that in open.
Open.
And following that, we do have a bylaw prepared for the appointment of the individual to the Economic Advisory Committee. So I will bring that motion up to the screen for you.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to rise and report. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Foster, Councillor Roy DiClemente, all those in favor? And that's carried.
And through you, Madam Mayor, I am just bringing forward the resolution about the bylaw. And this is with respect to appointment of an individual to the Economic Advisory Committee. And it's bylaw 2022-002.
Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Persicini, seconded by Councillor Crothers. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-002, being a bylaw to appoint an Economic Development Advisory Committee, be taken as read, enacted, and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. Item H is our confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021 be a bylaw confirm the proceedings. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Item I is other business. We do have a special meeting of council scheduled for January 18th, 2022. It has been canceled. And I would need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Morton and Councillor Crothers. Be it resolved that council requests staff to cancel the January 18th, 2022 special meeting of council being held at 5 p.m. All those in favor? And that's carried. And an adjournment today at 1:19, moved by Councillor Crothers, Councillor Persicini, all those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much. And it's 20 after 1. We're in good shape today. Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good day.
Take care.